Hey, this is Bentley Atkins. This is going to be a quick to run through on our homework one group project that's due Monday. I'm going to comment the other people that worked on this with me in the comments, and I will also try to make a YouTube video link to this project. So let's get started. I'm going to try to make this really quick. So first off, actually, let's go back here and I'm going to change this to HTML. We have this. There's also this click here to return, but I'll go over that in a sec. I'm just going to really quick go over here. And we're going to start with a number of rows, columns, minimum random value, and then a maximum random value. Once those are you put in a minimum value and it return and a maximum value and it returns numbers in between there. And once we get it running, you will see that it just because we have a minimum random value doesn't mean that it's going to be guaranteed to print that minimum random value. It's just going to print numbers in between. So let's go with the same one as the example, a 5 by 13 array. We'll do negative 10 to 50 as our values. And as you see, we did end up getting a negative 10, but we didn't get a 50, which was our maximum. So it searches through the array, and we're going to get 50 from that. And we also have a negative 10 here. Uh, Prints out the row, each row at each index, and total sum, average, standard deviation. And then a third table is created that has whether it's positive or negative. And if we click to return here, it takes us back. Let's let's once again go over this, but we're going to go to our code now. Let's actually refresh to see if we can get a different value. Yeah, so negative 950. Let's go to Visual Studio and we can look through here and see what we've done. So we've created a HTML document that is a title of array demo, and we have created a form that's going to link to the array demo. We can click this and it takes us here. We'll go over that in a second. A label for each one with some string, and then an input that says that you can have a minimum value between 1 and 100, and the input is required, and then a line break. Then column, minimum, any values taken, it just is required that there is a value inserted, and then a reset button and a submit button that will reset the form, and then as you can see, submit, that actually takes us to the PHP form. Uh, just oh no, not this. Let's go back. Yes. Oh wait, not that. Let's use our click here. We'll just go 513, hit reset, and it resets 513, negative 10, and 50. Oh, and okay. So that's everything for HTML. Let's go PHP. Uh, we've encoded it in HTML um, syntax. And in our body, we have actual PHP code, which starts with this question mark PHP. And the post method we use to pull inputs from the HTML file. Once we have this, so the form action links to this array demo or the PHP file, and these create takes those inputs and turns them into variables for us to manipulate inside of the PHP code and actually back into it a little bit. We created a nested for loop that it creates an array, um, searches through while it's less than rows, and the rows are going to be filled, then the columns, and then it's going to take a random value between the min and the max, which is our variables we created from our input. Random values are then inserted into the array. And I had to use this because I kept getting an error because where you're actually creating this, if you have a type of array or if you have array type, it won't accept it. You can't put an array type into a string. So we had converted into a string, which this essentially creates an array or takes the values of the array value, squishes them down, makes it like one line if you're thinking about it, and merges all the arrays together, and then it finds the minimum value through that flat array. And then this converts those values into a string variable or a string value. Uh, Converts the minimum and max to values, and yeah. Tables created with the PHP variables with HTML formatting. We have our header, the array size, minimum, maximum values, border, which gives it the border around each one of the, or this actually creates the table and gives a border around each one of or each one of the data, all of the elements that are actually in the array. This actually creates the array. TR means table row, so it creates a row after it's iterated through for each row. Then it creates another one that another nested part of the nest for loop iterates through columns, and we're going to insert table data into the table, and this is going to actually be our elements that are actually going to go inside of the table. It's going to end after that. It's going to create it in that row and then start back with a new one, and then this will end the table once it's ran through the whole for loop. Um, and then we're going to create an array that's going to hold sums, averages, standard deviation, placeholder for sum. Our sum is now going to equal to the total value of the array values for each one of those rows. And then the sums is going to hold those elements that were the array is going to hold those values in there. Average is going to be the sum, which is the total value of each row, and then it's going to divide it by the columns, which if we had 5 columns, then it'll take our total value and divide it by 5. And then our array, those values will be stored in the averages array. And this is our standard deviation placeholder, our placeholder for variance. It's going to iterate through the columns. It's going to do a power. It's going to take this number and then square it or get it to the exponent of 2. Then our standard deviation is squared of the variance divided by the columns. And then those values will be stored into the standard deviations array. And then we're going to create a new table. We're going to iterate through the length of the rows while I is less. A new rows created, table data of I, which will be 0 if we're starting on the first one. Then the next data will be the sums at index I, which is the total value of that row. Number format just basically moves it, adds 3 decimal places, so it'll be value dot 000, kind of a float really. And then it will close. Then same thing for standard deviation. Then it'll close that row and then start a new one. And since we had 13, or I can't remember actually, was it 5 rows and then 13? Oh yeah, no, excuse me. So it'll be 5 rows and 13 columns. And then, so actually, for the, whenever I was talking about this, it'll actually be 13, not 5. And then it will close each one of those rows and then close the table here. Uh, Creates a new table. Also, this break's important so that they're not all mushed together. Breaks each table. Each value is then reprinted into a third table. So this is the same thing as this one here. Takes each of the values from the array values and puts that table data in there. And then this is going to actually create a new row under this for loop because it's going to go through all of the rows and it's going to create a new row for each one. And at the end, after it's ran through this for loop, it will close that row and then we'll pick back up from this one. And so in that column, it's going to create our index, and then immediately under that, it's going to create a new row while it's less than the columns. And if the value is greater than 0, less than 0, or simply 0, it's going to return a string, either 0, negative, or positive, uh, table closes here, and then ahref is our link to the HTML, and then this is the text that's displayed that you can click on that will take us back to the HTML file. Uh, let's see. Let's go ahead. Yeah, and it's pretty simple, not too bad. It was a fun little project. Yeah, so it takes us back here. All right, I think that's everything we need to cover. So, thank you.